Hello there and welcome to my guide for painting the Immortal Hulk from Marvel Crisis Protocol. As you can see, the very first thing I did was give it a spray with some matte white spray from Colourforge. I thought I'd start with his trousers first, so for that I'm going to use some Nagaroth Night. And this will be followed by a wash with Druchii Violet. Once that wash had dried, I relayered the Nagaroth Night, making sure I avoided all of the deep recesses. I then started on the first set of highlights with a 50-50 mix of Nagaroth Night, and I'm going to butcher this next one horribly, Xerxes Purple. This was followed by the same mix but at a 30-70 ratio in favour of Xerxes Purple. I really can't pronounce that, I do apologise. This was followed by that paint that I can't pronounce just by itself. And this was followed by a 50-50 mix of Xerxes Purple and Slaanesh Grey. I actually think it's pronounced Xerus, so I'm going to try that next time. Then it's Slaanesh Grey just by itself. However, this is just on where the trousers would sort of fray and those little lines. But we're going to come back and do more later, as we're going to start working on Hulk's skin, and for that I'm going to use some Warpstone Glow. This will take at least 3 or 4 coats, however. Try not to rush it and make sure you use nice thin coats. And then we're going to give all of the skin a nice wash with some Beltan Green. Once that wash has dried, we're going to go back and layer in the Warpstone Glow, making sure we avoid all those recesses. After that, we're then going to do a 70-30 split of Warpstone Glow and Moot Green for the first set of highlights. For the highlights, we're going to do several layers. What we're going to do is we're going to build up each layer so it looks like the light is hitting that area and the skin is getting lighter as we go. So with that in mind, the next highlight will be a 50-50 mix of Warpstone Glow and Moot Green. This will be followed by a 30-70 mix of Warpstone Glow and Moot Green. And now we're really trying to just hit the spots where the light would start to hit, so it's mostly going to be like the tips and peaks of all the muscles. And then finally, Moot Green on its own for the final highlight. And this will be focused entirely on where the light would strike. Now we're very carefully going to dot in his eyes with some Abaddon Black, followed by some Avalan Sunset, and then finally Abaddon Black again to dot the pupils. With his eyes out of the way, we're going to paint the inside of his mouth with some Screamer Pink. And to highlight his tongue, we'll do a 50-50 mix of Screamer Pink and Pink Horror, followed by a final highlight of Pink Horror just by itself. For his teeth, we'll use some Morghast Bone, followed by a 50-50 mix of Morghast Bone and Wraithbone, then Wraithbone just by itself, followed by a final highlight of Matte White. Next, we'll finally go back to his trousers and do a 50-50 mix of Slaanesh Grey and Matte White for the bits of string that are going in between the tears. And we're very carefully going to sort of dot sort of a little pattern around the edges as well, so it looks like the edges are frayed. Next, we're going to move on to his belt, and we're going to use some Mournfang Brown. And after that, we're going to do a very small, thin wash with some Agrax Earthshade. And while that wash dries, we're going to paint his hair with some Abaddon Black. And to add a little hint of green to his hair, we're going to wash it with some Beltan Green. With the wash dry on his belt, we'll go back with some Mournfang Brown just to relayer it, avoiding all the recesses. Followed by a 50-50 highlight of Mournfang Brown and Skag Brown. And finally, Scrag Brown by itself. Next, we'll move on to his shirt, and for that we're going to use some Grey Seer, followed by a 50-50 mix of Grey Seer and Matte White, with the final highlight of Matte White. To highlight his hair, we're going to use some Corvus Black. We're also going to use the Corvus Black to paint in some eyebrows, but you can skip this step if you want to. It's now finally time to move on to his base, so all the mud is going to be painted with some Dryad Bark. which will be dry brushed with some Gothor Brown. We'll then paint the concrete with some Dawnstone, and that'll get a dry brush with some grey cere. I'm going to paint the metal on the base with some Iron Hand Steel. And if you're clumsy like me and you dropped him while painting, you might have lost the parking meter, so we'll also paint that with Iron Hand Steel as well. And for the reading, we'll paint some grey cere to begin with, followed by matte white. And then some Abaddon Black just to put some markings in place. I'll also use the Abaddon Black to paint the rim of the base as well. At this stage, clumsy me will then re-glue the parking meter back into place. I'll let that dry before doing the final wash. And that final wash will be some watered down Agrax Earthshade, all over the base and all over the mud. And there we are, that's Hulk finished. I really enjoyed painting this model. Atomic Mass do incredible miniatures. Their Marvel stuff and their Star Wars stuff is absolutely splendid, and it's really fun to paint, if not on the little bit of the expensive side. As Hulk is a fairly big chap, he did take around about 6.5 hours to paint, but it was a lot of fun doing so, and I'm really happy with the results. If you followed this guide, I really do hope you found it useful. And maybe think about giving the channel a subscribe, the video a thumbs up, maybe a share as well, and then, well, I'll see you on the next one. Thanks again for watching, and goodbye for now.